Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to After Poured. I am your host, Jason Cercone, and we are taking an inside look at Poured in Pennsylvania, the series. Today is all about episode 3. If you haven't done so already, jump over to the Poured in Pennsylvania YouTube channel. You can check out the first 5 episodes, which are all live for you to stream. Episode 3 takes us to various points of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to check out the thriving beer scenes all across the state, to tell the story and to help us learn more about what's going on. As always, here on After Poured, I am joined by Nate Kresge of Poured in PA and GK Visual. Nate, what is up, my friend?
Nothing much. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
So we were in central Pennsylvania taking a look at the York County Ale Trail. We got to check out Meeting of the Malts, which is an annual event that we're going to learn even more about later. And we also checked out Bonifest, which unfortunately, well, we don't know where that's going to go with new rules, but we'll talk all about that. But let's give it, well, I should say before we get into talking about the show, for all of you watching, go check out episode 3 if you haven't done so yet, and then jump back and you'll have some more context about what Nate and I are going to talk about. Give us a breakdown of the production of this episode, my friend.
Yeah, so I mean, here's an episode with multiple stories in it, so there's a lot that went into it, obviously. And I'll just give you a little behind the scenes of how we put this show together. We set out to at least put out 4 episodes to start, and we ended up with enough material to get the 5 episodes that you have right now. And pretty much when we gathered all these stories, they weren't necessarily set into their episodes yet. And so we kind of saw what might fit with another story, length, obviously played a lot into it. So here's an episode that had some really cool little stories that gives a nice array of different things in the Pennsylvania's beer industry here. But the York County Ale Trail, we can start there. And man, that was a cool experience for all of us. Danielle even got to join us, our host, on this one. And we went out to meet Glenn, and Glenn he put it together. He had some other people join us on the tour, and he couldn't have been any better at organizing everything, and just a wealth of knowledge. And man, if you have the chance, check it out. I mean, it's not like, and he says it in the episode, it's not a drunk bus. It's not to get drunk. You're definitely going to learn a lot. And I think that was a really cool part of this whole thing, is the learning aspect of it.
What I liked about that segment of episode 3 was the fact that it really zeroed in on a lot of brewing production processes, and you see that from each brewery. And anybody that's been on a brewery tour can attest. That's typically what you learn. You get some history about the brewery, and you learn about the processes that go into making their beer. When you guys started capturing that story, did you have the idea in mind that you wanted to have an episode that had a strong focus on beer production, or did that just happen organically as you were taking the tour with Glenn?
Well, I think that was a little bit more organic. I mean, that's how Glenn does these tours, which we appreciate. And obviously, we had some relationships with some of these brewers too that we tapped into. Excuse the pun there, but I'm pretty sure when you take these tours, that's very similar to what it's like. You get a behind the scenes look. You get to learn a little bit about the whole process. It's not just sampling beer and sitting at a bar, but yeah, I mean, and we actually visited some breweries I wasn't familiar with. Stony Run there, a really cool brewery that I had not been to before, and just fantastic beers. So we learn a lot on these shoots, just like everybody else, and come away with new friends and new information that we didn't have before.
I want to talk more about the next visit, or next part of this was when you guys went to St. Boniface, and when you came up to do my interview, which is seen on episode 5, and then we also did my podcast, you brought a little care package. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is a pale ale that St. Boniface does. Hands down, the best pale ale I've ever drank.
Yeah.
I'm not mixing this up, right? Because I know there's a few different breweries in that care package.
Yeah, they do it. The name, I'm sorry, escapes me right now.
Yeah, me too. It starts with a P, I think.
Padea.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, that's a great beer. They do this orange pollinator beer that it blows my mind. It's one of my favorite beers. They do some awesome barrel aged stuff. I think they're just one of these, underrated breweries in Pennsylvania, these little gems that, they don't show up on these lists of, and this is not a dig on anybody, but, they're not the tired hands that's getting traded and waiting in line for, but
Yeah.
man, some killer beers all around. And if you have a chance, check them out. Here in the central Pennsylvania area, you can usually find them at beer distributors and even some grocery stores. But if you're in the Ephrata area, I mean, swing by, check them out. And it is a shame. I'm not sure what's going to happen to beer festivals this year. We're still going to be telling the story of beer festivals. Obviously, this is in here. We had Fresh Fest, and we have, you'll be seeing Lidditz Craft Beer Festival showing up in a future episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a part of our story here. It's part of everybody's beer story, but it's a shame. Obviously, it's more than just the shame that beer festivals aren't happening. I understand that, but
Yeah.
We can remember these great times, and hopefully we can return to that. And the thing that I love about Bonifest is just how it's such a kind of a family affair, and you have people coming back into town just for this festival. They're giving, donating back to local food banks, and people just really enjoy coming together. It's a small little gathering. It's not anything huge, but it's one that people really seek out.
I think Bonifest, and I don't know the exact timeline of all of the different festivals, but I think what you're seeing with what, say, Bonifest did with Bonifest is breweries starting to do their own little festivals. Yeah. And we just learned, as we are sitting and recording today, I believe it was this morning or last evening, I saw that Voodoo with their new fest, Good Vibes, which has had I think they were 2 years deep, and this year would have been their third. Unfortunately, they had to cancel and postpone until 2021. So unfortunately, we're seeing that's the story now, because I think everybody is just doing their best to err on the side of caution and do their best to keep the visitors safe and keep their employees safe as well. I hope that as we roll into 2021 and things continue to evolve and change with hopefully vaccines for COVID-19, we start seeing even better versions of these festivals come about, because I'm sure these breweries, they've already created an awesome environment, and I'm sure they're itching to get back to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that hurts, listen, it's not all about money, but obviously, these festivals do take a lot of planning, a lot of money, and having to cancel it. That takes a toll and a hit, especially the charitable aspect of these. Some of the organizations we talked to Sarah with Harrisburg Beer Week. They benefit Harrisburg River Rescue. When these nonprofits don't have that fundraising aspect that they were used to, it's a trickle down. It's not just affecting the people that are attending. It's affecting some organizations that really relied on that for a source of funding.
Another stop, and it was set up as your brewery spotlight for this episode, was Form, which was a really, really cool story. And that style of beer isn't typically my cup of tea, but I just the hearing the processes and the way that they produce beer is freaking cool. Have you got to experience some of those beers yourself? Tell us about.
Yeah, for sure. So actually, the cool story here is I actually grew up with Matt Stone, and I knew Scott Church for a long time too. And these guys, Scott Hatch. These guys have been involved in music and just artistic endeavors for a long time. And when they hooked up here with Ethan and started brewing these beers, I'd heard a lot about it. I heard they were home brewing and stuff like that. I always wanted to check it out, and happened to be in Philly the one time, and jumped in an Uber and headed there. And just like they talk about in the segment, the Uber driver was like, I don't know if this is the spot. And I said, yeah, it's fine. And so, I ventured down that alley by myself and saw the green light at the end of the alley, and knew I was in the right place. But yeah, it's a hole in the wall. It's something like you've never seen before. The beers, for fans of that style of beer, they're just phenomenal. And sure. You're not going to experience anything like this, at least in Pennsylvania, that I've come across so far. it's even a cool story about the process, and they talk about it there, how they'll brew at another brewery and truck all that over to their place and let it ferment at their place, and they have complete control over that. And just being in there and seeing the rack of the barrel, the stack of the barrels there that everything's aging in, and sitting there and having a beer right beside the beer that's aging, just a cool experience in itself.
It reminds me a little bit of a speakeasy type of atmosphere.
It is very much so, yeah, because there's not really a sign out front that
you'd never expect it.
Right, yeah, but if that green light's on, they're open.
Man, we've got some cool shit here in Pennsylvania.
We do, and that's part of this show. Obviously, is discovering those little gems and those hidden corners of the beer world in Pennsylvania.
Absolutely right. So for all of you guys watching us right now, if you haven't checked out episode 3. Jump over to the Poured in PA YouTube channel and do just that. If you have checked it out, go check it out again. It's good stuff. And as we've talked about here, we've learned a lot about what's happening across the state, which is some good stuff. Obviously, things are starting to change a little bit, but we're now moving into those greener phases, and hopefully things are going to be on a good path going into summer and beyond.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to our next 2 guests here. I think they're going to have a lot of insight on to what breweries are doing and what the future holds for us here in the state. Absolutely.
So we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to be joined by Dan LaBert and Adam Harris of the Brewers of Pennsylvania organization. And we're going to learn a lot more about what's been happening in Pennsylvania through the pandemic and what's going on as we start to break away from the initial lockdowns. Stay right there. We'll be right back.
Philadelphia.
Pittsburgh.
Lancaster County.
York County. Washington County.
Hershey, Elizabethtown, Carlisle, Harrisburg.
Like, bruh, let me explain the concept of beer festival.
We're always creative in the beer and the products that we make, but we can be creative in business too. We don't just have to be creative in beer.
Collaboration is so fun and it's so exciting. Most beautiful things come out of collaboration.
It's the camaraderie that you see with our breweries. They do not compete against each other. They compete together.
Everything about the podcast is about collaboration. It's about, you doing something good. I have a platform. We talk about what you do because I rocks with it.
There are just some occasions that call for a beer, and that can't be replaced.
Welcome back to After Poured. This is Jason Cercone, and we are talking about episode 3 of Poured in Pennsylvania, the series. If you haven't done so already, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, jump over to YouTube. You can pick up the episode there, as well as the first 5 episodes of Poured in PA, the series. Joining us now, straight from the Brewers of Pennsylvania, we have Dan LaBert, the executive director of the Brewers of Pennsylvania, as well as Adam Harris, the deputy director of Brewers of Pennsylvania. I'm getting all tongue-tied.
He sometimes wishes he was the deputy.
And I'm the one without. I'm the one without a beer in my hand. And we got Nate Kresge with us as well from Poured in PA. Guys, welcome to After Poured. Glad to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thanks for having it. Appreciate it.
You got it, man. So we learned a lot about what's going on with Brewers of Pennsylvania on the show, and the episode 3 covered Meeting of the Malts, which is an annual meeting that you guys have every year that brings brewers from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and across the country together. And we learned a lot about who comes into the state to check that out. But why don't you give us a little bit of background about what the Brewers of PA is all about and what your guys' role is in pushing the craft beer scene forward in Pennsylvania?
Sure. First off, want to thank and recognize GK Visual. Not just saying this because, we're on video with you guys. I think GK Visual is one of the best, production companies that I've ever come across. You've done a great job positioning beer in Pennsylvania and the Brewers of Pennsylvania as an organization. And candidly, if there's a client out there that's not working with you, that's their mistake, because you guys are putting out some great material. And I think Poured in Pennsylvania is a perfect example of putting your beer where your mouth is, candidly.
I appreciate that. I'll get that check out to you here pretty soon.
Yeah. I think it already arrived, didn't it? We've been back and forth with that one. Brewers of Pennsylvania, it's an interesting organization. It's an interesting time for the state. We are we are known by the meeting of the malts. We are known by the fantastic members we have and all the great beer they're putting out. But, candidly, we exist to make sure the playing field is level for breweries located within the Commonwealth to produce their beer, deliver a great customer experience, and keep beer flowing in the state. But, sadly, if it weren't for the Brewers of Pennsylvania, a couple of votes this way, a couple of votes another way, and your favorite local brewery can be out of business or have the deck significantly stacked against them. And that's just the reality for our state. I think we could jump into where the meeting of the malts is, but that's where the Brewers of Pennsylvania, we've been lucky. This year we were able to bring on Adam Harris. Adam and I are co-directing the Brewers of Pennsylvania, and Adam has a 16-year history in the state, former House Liquor Chair, and the insight has been eye-opening on how quickly the beer landscape can change if there is not a group advocating for, candidly, for craft beer in Pennsylvania. And that's we're lucky to bring on Adam.
Adam, tell us a little bit about your experience and everything you've been doing with the Brewers of PA since joining.
Sure. So I've been on board just about a year and a half now, and it was really fun to go back during the quarantine and actually rewatch Port in Pennsylvania. And it was cool now making those actual personal connections with a lot more of the people in the documentary. It was a lot of fun to watch it again. But again, as Dan said, it's top-notch stuff. Your work is fantastic. Thank you for highlighting our members. When I talk to people about the BOP, I always tell them we're an incredible growth story. Dan will tell you it started with probably about a dozen members not that long ago. We're up over 245 members now. But with this unprecedented time, obviously, we're looking to make sure that the laws are as beneficial as they can be, because this is a life and death struggle for these breweries trying to survive under these new rules. And we want to make sure that when we beat COVID, and I fully believe we will, that we implement the changes and become permanent. We want to make sure they're pro-brewer. So our members that probably maybe have gone in debt a little bit or are losing business as this goes on longer and longer, we want to make sure they can thrive and make that money back and be successful in through 2021.
And this is you nailed it right on, Adam. Right now is just a crazy time. And how have you seen these breweries adapting to all these changes that have been brought about, and how are they moving forward with their businesses as we press on through this, as you said, unprecedented time?
And I think Dan will agree. The number one thing I've noticed since day one is how well everyone works together. They really are a collaborating force. They'll share something that they're doing with another brewer. There's no effort to sort of get ahead of another brewer. They want everyone to do well. I think people maybe are more educated now on the full set of laws that governing brewing. They know more of what they can do. If you were just fully a tap room model before, you maybe weren't doing self-delivery. Now you're learning, hey, I can deliver my product, and maybe that's what I need to do to survive. So we'll do legal calls and BOP calls, and you have a member in Pittsburgh talking about what they're doing that's working, and someone in northeastern or northwestern PA will pick up on that and take off with it as well. So it's survival and everyone helping everyone out.
Dan, anything to add to that?
No. On the spirit of entrepreneurialism is alive and well, as it always has been in the brewing industry, and watching the creativity, because candidly, this pandemic is going to have about a 20 to 25% impact on many breweries in Pennsylvania. I mean, some may not open their doors, some may be running to catch up for a few years now, but I think it was once the initial shock took over and we realized that this isn't a sprint, this is a marathon to get through it, a lot of the member breweries have positioned themselves well. I mean, I guess the best way to look at it is, the Brewers of Pennsylvania from a membership model has been growing every single year. More breweries have joined the BOP every single year since its inception in 2012. This past year, we're on par to finish where we finished last year. So even though the pandemic has impacted breweries, they are still investing in the Brewers of Pennsylvania as candidly as their sword and shield on what's going on. And it's apparent. So I think the spirit and the entrepreneurial mindset of brewers is always going to make this industry be very successful.
And to speak to that point, Nate, I'm curious, has anybody reached out to you guys over at GK Visual about doing any sort of video campaign or anything to sort of reintroduce themselves to, hey, we're still here, we're still producing beer, and we're going strong now that we're starting to come into the green phases and hopefully get to the ending phases of this pandemic?
Yeah, not really. We found with marketing for breweries, marketing budgets, especially in times when money's tight, is one of the last things that they're going to be spending money on, and we're fine with that. We're happy to be doing what we're doing and supporting the industry this way. But for a lot of these small breweries, I mean, just even keeping the lights on right now is the biggest concern, and marketing and video production and things like that. Now, a lot of them have done awesome jobs, taking cell phones into their own hands and putting out some really cool videos. So, I applaud them for doing that. And, we're always happy to help, but I think Port and PA is the best way we can do that right now.
I think we saw even before the pandemic, more breweries were starting to take that approach of using their cell phones and making their own videos, because the power of video, as you demonstrated with Port in Pennsylvania, is second to none right now. And I think more of that creativity has continued to shine as we've moved forward. But now that as we sit and record this, we are just a few days past the initial first weekend of the green phase here in Pennsylvania. What have you guys seen in regards to the reopening processes? How has that been treating everybody, and how have they been best going about making it work for them?
I'll say it, in classic Pennsylvania liquor law fashion, always running to catch up, always archaic, way too many lawyers in the room that don't know what they're doing, and way too many government agencies putting restrictions in place and they don't understand how it impacts a product or impacts an industry. I mean, let's not, sugarcoat it. Pennsylvania breweries have a serious economic impact across the state, across tourism, giving people jobs, tens of thousands of jobs. And this phased opening has been a challenge. Thankfully, the Brewers of Pennsylvania make a great investment with people who know what they're doing and how to give advice to each brewer as they different things change, right? What's the process for ordering a beer at the bar versus sitting outside? What's the process for shipping your beer? What about to-go sales? What about growlers? I'll tell you, I think the biggest impact that we're going to see across craft beer, especially with the pandemic lurking in behind and there being no identified vaccine, is how do beer fests exist from here on out? Yeah. There are bigger challenges that are around the corner for a lot of Pennsylvania breweries, but going back to that spirit of creativity and spirit of wanting to serve their community, servitude, if you would call it. Last year in 2019, the Brewers of Pennsylvania held a symposium, and we started seeing that breweries were making a proactive effort to get outside their existing community of candidly everybody looking alike in the bar, and now changing to be a bit more inclusive instead of being exclusive. Right? There's always that bar down the corner that everyone wants to go to, but no one actually goes to. Well, Brewers of Pennsylvania, the individual members in the organization, started taking a good hard look at how to serve the community as a whole and be much more inclusive, so that when these phases do happen, hey, it's beer, it's social, everyone's invited, it's a safe environment. I was happy to be a part of an organization that was embracing that spirit long before it took a pandemic and some other craziness that followed in our world, and actually see we're ahead of the game as compared to running to catch up like our phased state opening is.
Yeah.
Adam, anything that you've seen on your end that could
just to follow up a little bit? Yeah, Dan touched on it. The shipping of beer. I mean, I said I've been on board about a year and a half. I don't think anyone asked me about shipping their beer in that first year and a half. We had numerous inquiries since this began. We had our legal team do a full document telling people all about how they can ship it. That's just another example of how our members, they can pivot on a dime. They're going to do what they need to do to get their product out to consumers all over the state and into other countries. And we had our legal team, Ted Zeller, worked out an issue with I won't say them by name, but a large shipping company that we would all know that was a little reluctant to take beer, and he walked them through exactly why it's legal and why under the law exactly where it is. So I think that's another big benefit that the Brewers of PA brings, is we're the eyes and the ears across the entire state. So we might have an enforcement issue going on in a couple areas of the state that's not a problem in other areas of the state. So we'll go to the LCE and find out, what's the correct ruling here. And sometimes Some of our breweries will maybe be getting citations or getting in trouble for things that in reality, is perfectly legal under the law. And we can get that addressed, and that order goes out from, headquarters in Harrisburg, and, we can make sure everyone has a fair playing field.
So instead of what can Brown do for you, it's what can the BOP do for our breweries.
I just
not that we're mentioning anyone by name.
Yeah. And another great example was, just even up to this past weekend, everyone was curious whether growler refills were going to be allowed, if you could sanitize it and send it back out. We finally got word this weekend that we could do that. And through our organization, we can then get that information out to all our brewers. So no one's at an advantage that someone else is. And so everyone knows what they can do, and hopefully they'll incorporate that, going forward.
I just think it's cool that we're at a point where we can talk about beer being shipped from brewery direct to a consumer's house, because you guys probably know this even more than me. It hasn't been many years since we've been able to get beer in a grocery store.
Correct.
Pennsylvania took a while to get caught up with where a lot of other states have been for years. So in regards to that end of it, where does the Brewers of Pennsylvania fit in regards to helping change some of these laws that may seem a little bit outdated to the common beer?
Well, let's back up a little bit before Adam could talk about how you maneuver the Pennsylvania liquor law system. The reality is the 3-tier system has a lot of good partners in it. There are a lot of good wholesalers out there. There are a lot of distributors and taverns that really take Pennsylvania beer, support it, put it front and center, and act as a partnership all the way through. And then there's the other side of the coin, which we'll save for another conversation. But there are ways out there that the system can succeed, but there has to be equity for everybody, and that's where the Brewers of Pennsylvania are focused, because the end result is, if you're a craft beer lover of a certain brewery and you go into the grocery store and your brewer does not have their product there, it may not be because the brewer doesn't want their product there. It may be because there's no more shelf space, or that shelf space is occupied by a massive conglomerate brewery that's not based in the U.S. and has hundreds of brands that they could take space from. There's a lot more to it than just how that beer ends up in the glass and how you enjoy it. Like I said earlier, one change of a vote here or there, and your favorite local brewery is out of business.
Yeah.
Adam, you could tell more about what beer equity. Equity for everybody is the best way to put it.
Yeah, and that's really our big job at the BOP, is keeping our pulse of all these changes, because it is a dire fight for shelf space. It doesn't take an expert in the alcohol industry to know things are changing when you go into a beer distributor and there's slushy machines, and there's, I won't say it by name, but there's seltzers that are available, and things are changing. And if we're not there fighting for brewers to make sure that our space is there, we're going to fall behind. And with the margins we work on, we can't have that happen. We know one of the strangest little glitches, obviously, in PA is the grocery stores. They simply just bought restaurant licenses, so they're still under that limit of beer that you can take out. So if I want to go to a Wegmans or a Giant, I can only walk out with a 15-pack of Troves or a 15-pack of Victory or another craft beer, when maybe I want a case, or maybe I want 2 cases. It's little glitches like that still kind of hold us back as a state. We have a lot of great things about our laws, and I think a lot of reasons brewers want to come here. You can brew an unlimited amount of beer. You can self-distribute your own beer. It's a lot of work and it's difficult, but you can do it. So we do have a lot of good things going for us, but we still have those antiquated Pennsylvania laws. And the greatest example is what happened with grocery stores. Instead of the law changing to allow them to get their own license, they began buying up all these restaurant licenses, which then had a trickle-down effect on everyone else. And the R license probably doesn't really work great for grocery, because, like I said, you can only come out with 192 ounces. So, we need a comprehensive, I think, liquor bill and to change things, I think, for everybody, for all the alcohol spirits. And we want to make sure that, the brewers get treated either fairly, or I would hope more than fairly.
Well, and back to the opening segment about the reference of meeting of the malts. That's how that event came together, was really looking at which legislators are paying attention to brewery issues and the economic impact we create. Different breweries and their creations, a great tasting festival that would follow, and hearing insight from what's going on around the country. Now, of course, in a pandemic world, Meeting of the Malts has to pivot. So we're going to look at other ways to showcase what legislators out there and what beer entities out there that are across the state that are helping. Adam referenced some of the resources in Pennsylvania. I mean, we have fantastic water, right? We have fantastic agriculture. We have fantastic proximity to major cities. So Pennsylvania can be a wonderful destination for breweries to open.
And that leads into the last question I wanted to ask you guys. What does the rest of 2020 have in store for Brewers of Pennsylvania and all of our breweries across the state? Because things have changed and we've all had to pivot and make adjustments. What do you guys see happening for the rest of the calendar year?
Well, Adam's heading up the legislative side of things, and I'm heading up the programmatic side of things. And I think right now both of our concerns are shared about making sure our breweries get reopened. They could operate at the capacity that they were set to operate at. They could take advantage of some of the credits that are available to, make capital investments and build forward once they get their feet back underneath them. And of course, that citizens of the Commonwealth and our borders are able to enjoy great Pennsylvania beer. I mean, we're still going to press forward with the Brewers of Pennsylvania, have a very popular symposium that candidly and selfishly, I think is one of the best resources for brewers and brewery staff to learn about how to market your product, how to leverage resources, understand different laws, creative and inclusive environment, different things that we've been very successful at the past few years. The Meeting of the Malts, though, I will say we are hoping to have that this year as part of our symposium, November 1st through the 3rd in State College, Pennsylvania at Toft Trees Resort. And that Meeting of the Malts this year, if it's, we had to pivot a little bit with some of the plans, but we were awarded a grant to launch what we're calling the Growler Awards. And this is going to be different, I wouldn't say stylistic awards. We're not going to award the best lager or the best Pilsner or best IPA. It's more about how breweries are positioned, their popularity among their following, what they're doing in their community, and then have a Meeting of the Malts Growler Awards within our symposium. That will, of course, be open to the public, but the goal for that is November 2nd. That's on the programmatic side. Adam, you want to dive into the legislative side, the reason why the BOP exists?
Sure. Well, I would just say personally, I'm kind of cautiously optimistic, especially as I see some places opening and they're doing the outside dining. But just anecdotally, the last time we had a legal call, most all the questions were about should I furlough my employees? What happens to their health benefits? What kind of federal aid programs can I get to keep myself afloat? Fast forward to today's legal call, and it was all about how do I serve beer? So that gives me a little bit of hope that we're sort of transitioning, hopefully, into this new being open, phase. But as we've been talking to all of our members, we've just been encouraging to keep reaching out to the legislators. Thank them. As a manufacturer, we've been able to stay open. We want to make sure they thank them for that designation. But let them know that, these changes that are coming now are not going to be temporary. And we do think that alcohol policy in Pennsylvania is going to be different when COVID is over. We want to advocate for changes that make sense for brewers, whether that's, the laws that govern our wholesale contracts or, simply being able to buy more beer if you go to a grocery store. We did get some movement on registers. There was legislation passed that the convenience stores will now be able to allow you to check out at any register. Next, we would obviously like that for grocery stores as well. If you've ever been stuck in one of the two lines that you have to use to buy alcohol in a grocery store, it's a little inconvenient. But, we have a lot of, good things on the horizon, but I think our goal right now is just to, get through this safely and be ready to tackle the legislative issues when things are back on track.
Jason, if you don't mind me jumping in here real quick, I just
Not
want
at
to
all.
let these guys give a little plug too. GK Visual's been a member of the BOP and can't talk. I've had some beer today, I guess. What word am I looking for here, guys? What's the name of that?
You've been an associate member for at least the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. So I just want to let them give a little plug about, for businesses that do want to get involved, that aren't necessarily a brewery. How do businesses go about doing that?
Yeah, that's great. And I appreciate that question. So here's a great stat for 2020. You're looking for obviously positive outcomes. Membership organizations are somewhat challenged, but the BOP has a membership level called the associate member. And that's for, candidly, any business that does business with a brewery. if you support Pennsylvania beer, here's your opportunity to get inside the Golden Gates, if you will, and interact with all the breweries to build your relationship. Because the last time I checked, most brewers don't want to be pulled out of brewing for a sales call or a cold sales visit. You know, the BOP and our events allows associate members to publicly support Pennsylvania beer, show their members that they're investing back in the state, but also give them an opportunity to interact with different breweries. And Nate, I was actually thinking of you when I saw the success from Port in Pennsylvania and then the series. I mean, how many of those breweries did you not know until you became a member of the BOP, and then hence a production that's now on Amazon, Netflix, and other channels because of that relationship. That investment turned into a pretty good return.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every event we've attended, we've met new people, we've found out new stories. I mean, part of what we do is just finding these stories, and it wasn't for the BOP events, we wouldn't have access to that, and that in itself has been so worthwhile.
Yeah, I'll tie in the stat. You have to, if you run a membership association, you have to tie it down to data. Last year, 2019, we finished with 111 associate members who invested in the program that we just talked about. This year, by the end of Q1, we have 111 associate members. That means every single associate member spot was filled before the end of Q1. That's a retention rating that's off the chart. So clearly, if you support Pennsylvania beer and you do business with Pennsylvania beer, then you should be part of the associate membership, because 100% retention is something that most associations never see.
You guys heard it here first. These guys obviously are playing a tremendous role in what is happening in Pennsylvania beer. And if you're a business that is part of the beer network here in Pennsylvania, they can do great things to help you. So definitely take the advice here to heart and use it to your full advantage. Dan and Adam, thank you very much for joining us on After Poured. It's been a pleasure rapping about Brewers of PA with you guys. If you haven't already, as I said before a few times through this episode, you can go watch episode 3 as well as 1, 2, 4, and 5 on YouTube. Poured in PA, the series, is live, soon to be on Amazon Prime. We will get there and update you as soon as possible. Guys, thanks again.
All right, guys. Cheers. Thanks for being here.
Thanks a lot.
All right. We'll be back next week with another episode of After Poured. I'm your host, Jason Cercone. Until then, cheers.